Peace, 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 peace. All right, we are live. I am going to wait for folks to trickle in. Okay, we got one of our guests in the building. Wonderful. Hey, Safia. All right, let me make sure that Sasa is on her way too. Hey folks, hey folks, hey folks. We are going to get started shortly. All right. If you are in the building and you want to shout out where you're watching from, we can do that as we wait for our other author to get here. Hey, from Fresno, California. We got Callie in the building. Safia, I'm so upset that Callie took you away from us. We miss you here in DC. Though it seems like Ashley writes books. She's there too, so maybe y'all can hang out without me. Okay, wonderful. And then we have our other guests here. Okay, wonderful. Let's get started. Okay, so hey folks, my name is Alexa Patrick. I am the programs director at Shout Mouse Press. If you are unfamiliar with us, we are a nonprofit writing program and publishing house that is committed to amplifying underheard voices. And really that's just like a fancy way of saying that we work with young people between the ages of 12 to 24 to write and publish books. Our books are for young people as young as babies with our mini mirror series, and then we go all the way up to young adult as well. We have 60 titles in total. We have over 125,000 books in circulation. So we've been busy. We've been super busy. But, welcome to this intergenerational author chat between Sasa Aakil and Safia Elhillo. I'm super excited about it. It's going to be amazing. This is the second installation of this IG Live series, which we plan to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Shout Mouse Press. If you missed the first installation of this series, the conversation between our author Santos, who's from Voces Sin Fronteras, and the incredible Jose Olivares, you can check out that full recording on our Instagram page. So you can chill out, watch this, and then head over to our page under the little videos tab, and then you can watch that chat as well. And then otherwise, the transcript of this conversation is going to be published in an anthology that we are putting out to celebrate our 10-year anniversary as well. So we got a lot of amazing stuff in store for you all. That said, without further ado, you're not here to listen to me talk about our organization stuff. You're here to listen to Safia Elhillo and Sasa Aakil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read their bios, I'm going to bring them up, and then we can get this thing rolling. Okay, so Sasa Aakil is a multimedia artist, writer, and the 2021 Montgomery County Youth Poet Laureate. Sasa has been featured in the Bethesda Magazine for her work as Youth Poet Laureate, as well as the Washington Post for her work on A Man Was Lynched Yesterday project in 2020, and for her work with Shout Mouse Press and her book I Am the Night Sky. She has been an active member of the DC art community since 13 and is now pursuing a degree. Actually, oh my gosh, you're not only now pursuing a degree in fine arts from Howard University, she finished her degree in fine arts at Howard University and was actually the valedictorian for her college. So that is Sasa Aakil. She's a big deal. Get into it. And then we have Sudanese by way of DC. Safia Elhilo is the author of Girls That Never Die, The January Children, Home Is Not a Country, and Bright Red Fruit, and co-editor of the anthology Halal If You Hear Me. Winner of the Sillerman First Book Prize for African Poets, the California Book Award and Arab American Book Award, and the Brunel International African Prize. She is also the recipient of a Canem Fellowship, gang gang, a Wallace Stegner Fellowship from Stanford University, and a Ruth, Lilly, and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation. Whew, bio is stacked. Her work has appeared in Poetry Magazine, The Atlantic, and the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, among others. So if you can all join me in welcoming these two amazing. Let's see if I can do this, or if it's gonna let me. All right, I'm just gonna do it that way. Oh my gosh! Hi.
Hi.
Look at your faces. They're perfect. Okay. Okay, I'm beaming. Y'all are fantastic. Hello. So good to see you all. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna have you do. I'm gonna throw out a cute little icebreaker, and then I'm gonna dip out so y'all can have your conversation. Does that sound good?
Cool.
All right, cool. So the icebreaker of the day is, ooh, what is a song that reminds you of home? Okay, I'm gonna go.
Okay. Sasa, you wanna go first?
Should I? Okay. I want to say, okay. I'm gonna go "Man in the Mirror" by Michael Jackson because that just reminds me of childhood and my grandmother and family and stuff. So
Nice.
that was on the spot. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah. I feel like I should have had an answer on deck ready to go. I'm gonna take the word home really literally in this case, and for obvious reasons, I'm thinking about Sudan a lot these days, and I am deeply obsessed with this song by Iman al-Sharif called "Dwalad min al-Shukriya," where it just has a little bop to it, but it makes me very emotional because you are hearing someone singing in Sudanese Arabic. So that will be my answer for now, although I feel like in 5 minutes I'm going to be like, I should have said a different song.
Me too. It's okay. I wanted to say hi.
Hey.
I've been listening to and reading your poetry and writing after your poetry since I was 13.
Oh my God.
So it's really cool to meet you in person.
It is
or not.
so lovely to meet you in person. I also, for everyone watching at home, this is take 3. This is the 3rd attempt at having this conversation because I have had a particularly hectic summer. So thank you also for being so flexible about this. And I'm so sorry that it took so long.
Of course. We made it work. Okay. I think it's...
Want to read us some poetry?
Yeah. Let's do it. And then I'm going to bounce it over to you. So I was looking at the work in the anthology and kind of trying to decide what I was going to read, and so I landed on this piece called Worksheet Number 1, which is somewhat hard to read out loud, but I'm gonna do my best. And hopefully anyone who's watching can go and actually look at the work in the book, because I think it's a lot better when it's read in the book. Worksheet number 1. Fill in the blank. Come celebrate with me the fact that every day blank has tried to kill me and has failed. Something, nothing, everything. Multiple choice. When I told the teacher what happened, she didn't A, know, B, care, C, both didn't know or care, D, neither didn't know nor didn't care, E, something else. Something in between. 2. Some days I feel I have to apologize. A, for my skin. B, to my skin. C, not at all. When he called me less than human, his voice became A, dagger, B, a bullet, C, a noose, D, my funeral, E, my pain, F, my fear, G, my reason to keep going. This wouldn't have happened to me if I were A, white, B, male, C, straight, D, rich, E, privileged, F, American, G, all of the above. F. If I keep going because A, I'm strong. B, I have no other choice. C, I want to prove them wrong. D, I have dreams. E, I have everything to live for. F, I can. G, blank needs me. H, why wouldn't I? Essay questions. How do you celebrate the fact that you're still breathing? Who named you? What have you named yourself? If you could throw yourself a party to celebrate simply being alive, who would you invite? Why?
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay. I am in conversation with this, also going to read a poem in the form of a multiple choice test. That'll be the little conversation we're having. This poem is called Vocabulary. Fact. The Arabic word hawa means wind. The Arabic word hawa means love. Test. Multiple choice. Abdul Halim said, "You left me holding wind in my hands." Or Abdul Halim said, "You left me holding love in my hands." Abdul Halim was left empty, or Abdul Halim was left full. Feyruz said, "O wind, take me to my country." Or Feyruz said, "O love, take me to my country." Feyruz is looking for vehicle, or Feyruz is looking for fuel. Kulthum said, "Where the wind stops her ships, we stop ours." Or Kulthum said, "Where love stops her ships, we stop ours." Kulthum is stuck, or Kulthum is home. Here's my little multiple choice test.
I love that poem so much, and I just listened to it again the other day, and I'm so glad I got to hear you read it live.
Thank you so much. I love getting to hear your poem too. I've been, in the months since we agreed to do this together, I've been reading your poems over, and I was wondering how that multiple choice one was going to sound out loud. So I love getting to hear it read.
That one is kind of wild. I never intended to read it out loud, but then I published it, and so I think it became something that I had to figure out how to do. It's exciting. Okay, are we ready to get into questions?
Let's do it.
Cool. Well, would you like to ask first, or should I?
Well, I'll start by asking you what, if you remember, when did you write the piece that you just read, and what was happening in the world when you wrote it?
Yeah. I wrote that piece in summer of 2019. No, summer of 2018, when I was 15, as part of the writing intensive that was the initial step for creating this anthology. And so I was in a space with 9 other young Muslims, and we were working on telling our story. And in the world at that time was the Trump presidency, and seeing and hearing the things that he was saying about just Muslim people generally, Black people generally, immigrant people generally, and then also in the air, and actually while we were in the middle of our writing process, the Muslim ban was, I want to say, ratified, although that feels like a dramatic word, but it was put into effect. And so we were all writing in this time of like all time, maybe not an all time high, but an all time like high in the public and unabashed hate towards Muslims. And also in a time where we really felt like our voices were being stifled. No one wanted to hear what we really had to say or what we knew. So this work, this piece, I think was a lot about, it wasn't even about me personally. The worksheet, a lot of people think it is about me, but it's not. I was kind of just parsing through and thinking about what it means to be a person who comes to harm at the hands of other people's ideas or other people's thoughts of them. And so really trying to kind of illustrate the story of not only myself but of other people from a variety of marginalized backgrounds who kind of have to like fight to clear out space around them to exist in the world. And kind of what that can look like and what it can feel like. Yeah. That's that. And I think I have the same question for you. What was that process of writing like?
Yeah, so this I'm trying to like rein in this impulse now, but every time I sit down to write a poem, particularly at the time that I wrote Vocabulary, which I want to say was 2013 maybe, I was convinced that every poem had to be like a poem in multiple parts. I couldn't just let a poem be its own thing and then let the next part be its own thing. So Vocabulary originally was part 3 of like a long monster poem, like whose other parts no longer exist anywhere. And it was my first, I think it was my first semester in an MFA program. And I was like, had a blossoming interest in making work that was opaque to certain readers. Because I already felt like so much of my work was not being read for like, I don't know, craft or lyric or whatever you want to call it, and was being read anthropologically to be like, what is the deal with Sudanese people or whatever. And I really resented that reading and wanted to block off access to like information, honestly, as much as I could in my poems. And I think that kind of like initiated my interest in making poems where like the information is very hard won, but the first 3 layers of stuff in the poem is not information. It's like, I don't know, sensation, noises, vibes, whatever, but not data necessarily. And so that was around the time where I first started incorporating pretty significant chunks of untranslated Arabic into my poems to create kind of almost alternate versions of the poems, where here's version A of the poem where someone who speaks all my languages and gets all my references, this is a version of the poem they will experience. Here's version B of the poem where someone who like speaks all my languages but maybe different dialects and so doesn't understand all my references. Here's version C for someone who doesn't speak Arabic, but ideally the English around it is still doing something, and that like empty space is also doing something interesting for someone who doesn't have access to the text. Maybe just the like symbols and the appearance of letters on a page that you can't actually read is visually doing something interesting. So this poem was one of the earliest in that experiment. And as you can tell by the fact that it's still pretty, like the information is pretty clear, you know? The poem is like, here is a homophone in Arabic and different ways that you can hear it in pop music. So it's, I don't think it's particularly opaque necessarily, but it was kind of the like opening notes of this thing that I would then spend the next like 7 years or so obsessed with doing.
Yeah, that's so dope. That's so cool and just like interesting and powerful. And I actually, a lot of people think I'm bilingual, but I'm not. I speak English, and then I have bits of Spanish because my grandpa's Panamanian, and I have bits of Arabic because I'm Muslim. But I think it's so interesting just playing with these different languages and the voids. And I really enjoy, as someone who does understand like random Arabic words, I really enjoy being able to go through and having some knowledge and some insight, and then also losing places and having those blanks that you mentioned. So I love that, and I love your writing, but you knew that. It's my turn to ask you a question. I'm curious for you, what is the most exciting thing about writing in your work or in your process or anything?
Yeah, I am not by nature a particularly verbal processor. So it's not, writing isn't even necessarily like how I make sense of the world or whatever. You know, my experience of the world is primarily like sensations and big unnamed feelings and colors and temperatures. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I like about writing is almost like, how do I describe it? Like the problem solving of taking all of these nonverbal sensations as the language through which I experience the world,
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to come up with the corresponding language. And so there's one of the most satisfying feelings in the world to me still is like writing a line or a sentence or something and stepping back and being like, oh my God, that is exactly what I meant. You know, it doesn't happen often, but there will be a moment where like I will be trying to translate this mass of like temperatures and vibes into language. Oftentimes it's an approximation, and I've learned to make peace with that, and I find that interesting too. I find that like attempt and failure generative and interesting too. But it'll be like once in a blue moon, I'll sit down, I'll write a sentence, and I'll be like, oh my God, exactly. That is exactly what I meant. And nothing feels as good or as satisfying to me as that.
I'm sure.
How about for you? What's the most exciting part of writing for you?
Okay, I'm gonna apologize in advance because my brother and his daughter are outside the door and they may be loud. But when I first thought about this question, my first thought, and this may or may not be true, is that I don't find writing exciting anymore, because I've been doing it since I was 9. The process of writing itself to me isn't exciting. It's actually very natural. It's like it's it's not a chore, but it's a thing that I go to. It's what I do naturally. It's instinct. And so I feel like I don't think very much about whether or not that's exciting. I think what really gets me, like, what I'm passionate about is bringing in or articulating certain ideas and like figuring out how to share that in the world. So I guess it's kind of similar to yours. But like when my brain is crazy and it's full of all of these different thoughts and things. And so I think the idea of translating all of that into something that's powerful and something that I feel can build bridges or can express something that hasn't been expressed before, or uh, help people heal. I think that's what really like makes me excited and passionate, and that's what I love. So yeah.
Beautiful.
So maybe I do find writing exciting. I don't know. That's just
well. I guess on the flip side, then, what do you find to be the most difficult thing about writing?
Maybe the same thing. It's crazy, but like getting all the things. I think what you said about like, the world for you is like sensations and colors and emotions, and I think for me, I feel like I process the world in a very basic way, but I like my head is full of colors and it's full of images, and I think that's one thing. Okay, I'm going to be articulate and say this in a way that makes sense. I'm a visual artist as well as a poet, and I think most of my ideas, most of my thoughts, everything that exists in my head is an image. I recently found out that like when you say apple, not everyone in the world pictures an apple. But I do.
Yeah.
Like all of my thoughts exist as images. And so I think for me what can be difficult is translating what I see as like a movie into words on a
Yeah.
page, you know? Because I don't think of the world in words necessarily. And so yeah, translating it into words can be difficult.
Yeah.
If that made any sense.
It does. I'm so fascinated by people who can do multiple things because I only know how to do one thing. How much does your visual art inform your writing and vice versa? Like, do you feel like they're separate parts of your practice in your brain, or do they bleed into each other?
They are definitely very much intertwined. And I think my my art doesn't exist without my writing, and my writing doesn't exist without my visual art. And I think the way that they interact mostly is just that I'm like one person, so everything that I do does come from me, and it like connects in that way. But also, I find myself echoing ideas across media. So like I'll sculpt something, and then I'll write it, and then I'll paint it, because these ideas are going straight across, and translating that way, which you know it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm not a visual artist, but I think a lot about. So I feel like I'm always referencing Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, even though I've never finished the book. So I'm just out here quoting a book I've never finished for years now. But there's a part where she talks about how, you know, we all as artists keep this well of images, and that well is the thing that kind of fuels or feeds every practice. And so I do also feel like my main, I don't know, container of stuff that all the work well of images. And you know, one of the handful of things I did take from that book before I didn't finish it is that you're supposed to keep you're supposed to keep feeding that well. You're supposed to keep your well full. And so I am now, especially, you know, when I was a younger writer, so much of it was, it's still like there's a lot of relationship to instinct, but I was so intuitive as a young writer, you know. I knew what I wanted to do even if I didn't know what to call it. And I just was like bubbling over with ideas at all times and didn't have to worry about like keeping my well full or whatever, because it was just a pretty resourceful well. And now that so much other stuff is in the way, I do have to kind of be a little more intentional with keeping my well of images replenished. And so I do consume a fair amount of visual art because I think it keeps my eye smart in a way that reading words doesn't quite do. I think reading is also obviously super important for my practice as a poet, but that's about like keeping my relationship to language active and fresh, and, you know, learning words that I didn't already know and things like that. But there's something about a few months ago, I had a friend visiting from out of town, and we went to the Getty, which is a art museum here in LA. And my friend was a visual artist, and so he looked at those paintings in a particular way that I wasn't like naturally programmed to look at them. So I would look at a thing that I would just think of as being like a picture of a landscape or whatever. And he was able to show me the ways in which the image moved, like how it like drew your eye across the page, which I didn't have the vocabulary to notice before. It was just, you know, something that was happening passively that I wouldn't have called any attention to. But then little things too, where, you know, we were looking at a bunch of super old paintings, and he starts to talk about how blue and purple pigments used to be super expensive back in the day because you could only get those pigments from, I think, Afghanistan or something. And so often when a figure was painted in blues or in purples, it was meant to symbolize like royalty or divine presence or something like that. And I first of all, was really fascinated. You know, it really like tickled my poet brain in a nice way. This idea that a color could have such figurative associations, and that you were supposed to just be able to like look at the color purple and be like, ah, yes, God. You know what I mean? So really loved the economy of language in that. But after that day, you know, the Getty's like up on a big hill. I came back down to the flats. I went to the grocery store, and my eye was so, it like felt like a sharpened pencil. You know what I mean? So everything looked more like itself. You know,
It
like,
felt like a sharpened pencil.
yeah,
Yeah.
like just like ready to go, ready to be used. Where, you know, I think and this was also a moment where I was just doing a lot of administrative work in my life and not particularly tending to my well, but it was like I remembered how to look with like a capital L. And so like spent like kind of too long of a time like spaced out in the grocery store, considering I only went in to buy an onion. And then like 20 minutes later, I'm like, these apples look so much like apples. You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
I do think that there's like a particular kinship for me between poetry and the visual arts, because it is like the units of memeasurement in both of those are images. Whereas I think in prose, you know, the unit is like a sentence, which is about information and stuff like that. Please forgive me, all prose writers, if that's not true, but they just do feel very connected in their like concern with images. And so I think it's really cool that you have both languages to do that.
Yeah, I haven't even thought of that in that way, but that's cool. You said something to me that was interesting. You said when you were younger, things were very intuitive, and now you have to work more intentionally on feeling your well. Is that something? Is that one of the difficulties with writing for you now, or what is something that is difficult for you, especially now that you've like matured so much in your art form and you have so much experience?
Yeah. I think part of the reason it's not just purely intuitive anymore is I have a lot more boundaries now. I have a lot more rules. I have a lot more of like a self-protective instinct. Whereas, you know, before, I started writing poetry when I was maybe 14, 15. I joined the DC Youth Slam team when I was 17. And during that moment, this was summer of 2008, and it was very, I imagine they're not doing this like this anymore, but it was very much a moment in Youth Slam in particular, at least. I don't know what was going on in Adult Slam, where it was very much like start from the question, what is the worst thing that's ever happened to you? And then the poem will come from there, you know? And it was so, I still remember the feeling. It's so like intoxicating to be witnessed and to be listened to, that I was like, oh, I will tell these people that I don't know legit anything about myself and my family and my life. But after that like initial wave of like really enjoying being witnessed and affirmed or whatever, there it kind of started to leave a bit of an icky aftertaste, where I, you know, it might be like an ungenerous description of my job that I am professionally vulnerable. You know what I mean? But even with that being true, there is some stuff that is not other people's business. And it took years and years of making work to understand that, and to ask myself what I owed the work versus what I owed myself, and how those two things can be at odds with each other. And as tempting as it is to prioritize the work over all things, because like, you know, how glamorous is it to be like the tortured artist that gave everything to the work? But I also would like to be well, you know what I mean? I would like to be okay. And I think that will make it so that I am a poet for longer than if I just like burn out like brightly and quickly and put all my business out in the streets and then have to spend the rest of my life recovering from that. So it means that it's just a slower decision-making process. It's not just like the pipeline from like brain to poem. There's so many roadblocks now where I have to check in with myself so many times. Whereas before I'd be like, I have an idea for a poem. Okay, I wrote the poem. And now I'm like, I have an idea for a poem. Is this like ethical and responsible to the people in my life, because this involves some of them as well? Is this something that I feel like I have processed in a therapeutic space that has nothing to do with the thing I do for a living before I like make work about it? So there's, it's a bit of a flow chart in that way. And so it often means that I will have, because, I still have that old muscle where like something bad will happen. And there's a part of me that's like, what's the poem in this? And then I have to be like, please stop it. There's no poem in this. Go heal. You know what I mean? So, but I really have to do a lot of work to keep that voice boxed in and not let it be the thing that's like operating the heavy machinery out here. And so it just means that it's really often slow going. And it often means now that I don't immediately trust my impulses at first. I have to like really like kind of take the wind out of my sails sometimes to be like, are you sure? Are you really sure? Are you really, really, really sure? And then if by the fourth sure, I'm like, yes, I feel okay writing poetry about this subject matter, then I'm like, okay, you can write your little poem then. But it's, I do believe that it's a more responsible and sustainable way to make my work. And also, I don't know, it used to be so fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it used to be quick and easy. I can imagine. This leads perfectly into my next question, which is like, what's something that you wish you knew as a younger writer? And I feel like you've touched on that a bit already. But yeah, what's one of those things?
Yeah, I think, and for various reasons, I'm thinking about this a lot these days, but I wish I had known as a younger writer, or more specifically, I wish an adult had told me as a younger writer that I would still be a poet even if I was not traumatized. I think I really like held so tight to those associations for a long time, where I was like, well, thank God I'm traumatized, because what else would I have to write poetry about? But people write poetry about all sorts of things and have forever. And so I wish I had known earlier, way earlier, to aspire to a life in poetry that allowed me to be as well as creative, and so now I'm a little bit of a broken record about it, where all I want to do is tell people that you don't have to be traumatized to be a poet, and I imagine I'm taking the fun out of it for some people, but
no,
such is my history.
No, I think as a young person who like experienced things that are really similar to what you're talking about, but I was blessed in that I had people around me to kind of like let me know that wasn't necessary. I think it's really important that there are those people around, because I watched my peers go through a really similar traumatic process to what you're describing, and that was just a lot for no reason. Like, that was not necessary. So I'm glad that there are people like you in the world now, to tell young folk they don't need to be traumatized to be poets.
Thank you. What is something that you wish you had known as a younger writer?
I think I've always been like very impatient, just generally with life, and I think specifically with things that I want to be good at. And in some ways it was like this overachieving was like my way of combating feeling like the world didn't want me, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to overachieve. I'm going to do everything that people say I can't do just so I can prove that I can do it. Which is really interesting because I, number one, grew up with like an amazingly supportive family, and no one in my direct world was telling me I couldn't do anything, but I just felt a sense of, I don't know, like the disdain that any Black child can feel when they grow up, and they know that their identity is not what's loved by their country, and so I had this impatience, And I really wanted to be the best poet out there. And I really wanted to, I don't know, perform in front of thousands of people for so much money and do an amazing job. But I wish I had known that all of the good things that I was looking for come with time, and that the beauty of what I was doing is in the hours spent and not in the end goal or like the finished product. And even now, I'm only 21, but I've been like writing in the DC poetry community, of which you are familiar, or with which you are familiar, for so long that I've built these connections and I have these amazing relationships and just like an amazing community full of beautiful people and beautiful writers. I run an open mic now, and I know that the real beauty is really in these moments. It's in the come up story or whatever. And even if I never make it to that end goal that young Sasa dreamed of so much, um, I'm what I'm experiencing now is what I love.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I love. And even if I never get to be, I don't know, like the most famous poet in the world, which isn't a good articulation of what my dream ever was. But if that was my dream, and even if I never get there, I have spent my days and I've spent my nights writing, making beautiful things, sharing beautiful things. And really, that was what I've always wanted. So, success is there, and it comes with time. It really, really comes with time.
Wow. I know that was addressed to your younger self, but I, as a 33-year-old, needed to hear that and feel deeply affirmed by it. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm glad.
My last question to you is, can you tell me a story about like an experience you've had sharing your work that stands out to you particularly, that moved you particularly, or that you like hold dear in your memory particularly?
Yeah, I'll talk about my open mic again. So for the past, I don't know if anyone told you, but for the past, year and almost 2 years, like a year and 9 months maybe, I've been hosting an open mic on the first Friday of every month, at the American Poetry Museum here in DC. Come through if you're in DC, audience. But I've been, number one, it's just been like amazing, and just I've been so blessed to like be able to share and just like experience all of this poetry all of the time, and it's really powerful. But I had a moment in, I want to say January, when I was reading a poem, and it was about kind of like my frustrations with the U.S. government and all the things that, all the issues that can come with living here, as a Black Muslim person, and all of that. And I was reading this poem, and an audience member was looking at me as if like they recognized me or like had heard the poem before, and I was looking at them like, I know you, you know. And afterward, we finished and we were talking, and they were like, I really feel like I knew what you were saying, but I don't know. And we had some conversation, and I realized I don't know this person at all, and this person does not know me. But what was so fascinating was that the sentiment of my words resonated so much and was so familiar to that person. And we kind of felt like we knew each other. And I deeply, deeply believe that like people's spirits can recognize each other. Like if someone is like your people or is like your home, then you can see that. And so that was a really cool moment, because it was just an example of two spirits recognizing each other. And I haven't seen this person in a couple months, but it was really dope to just have that moment, and to know that you can know someone through these like otherworldly, ethereal, poetical moments that exist and that take place. I'm wondering, what's a moment like that for you? What's something that you've experienced similar to that?
Yeah. First of all, I love that story that you just told. And that is the thing I will now be aspiring towards every time
Oh.
I read poetry. um, so, you know, I mentioned earlier that I came up as a young person through slam, which I have mixed feelings about in a macro sense. But one thing that has endured about my time in those spaces is that I think of poetry as being such a team sport. You know what I mean? I've never been like alone as a poet. And when I was younger, we weren't using these terms for it, but you know, the second me and my friends started getting apartments, there was always a salon happening, you know? So my favorite feeling in the space of reading poetry is like being in someone's apartment and there's like kind of not enough chairs for everyone, so people are sitting on the floor, and reading a poem in those spaces. You know, back in my poetry slam days, we used to call it a third round, and it would happen like in a hotel room or in a dorm after the main slam. But the spirit of that, you know, where now that like all of the outward facing professional competitive whatever part of this poetry gathering is out of the way, we're all gonna voluntarily gather in a social capacity in like an intimate space and share poems with each other just for the sake of sharing poems. We're not trying to win a slam. We're not making any money. It's not, there's no like accolade in it. It's just for like the pure joy of like doing this thing you love with a group of fellow travelers, fellow weirdos. And that's still my like ideal poetry reading venue, you know? There was a moment last year where my partner is very social. He likes being around people a lot. I am for sure the resident introvert here. I like being by myself a lot. But I love hosting. I love having people here at my apartment. And we would end up for this like really beautiful stretch of time last spring, like we would have people impromptu come over, just be in the neighborhood, come up, and they would turn into these impromptu salons, you know, where someone would start singing, someone would play the piano, someone would start reading a poem. My husband's friend brought his cousin who plays the cello, who just like had a cello on him randomly. That you know what I mean? Magic. So that is, there is like no stage in the world that interests me half as much as that particular feeling where it like, you know, because there's something so like how voluntary it is, because we could be doing anything else in a gathering space like that. We'd be dancing, we could be gossiping, we could be watching a movie, and the fact that of all the various things that one could do at a party, everyone is like, I would like to share a song or a poem with you. Magic still, you know? Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love how your friend just had a cello.
You know what I mean? Imagine just also like a cello. It's not like a casual thing you just keep on you like a
big
harmonica. You know what I mean?
Large instrument. But the spirit is enduring. It really is. Then I think like these personal moments that you're describing really tie into the next question, which is who or what do you write for? Like, what is the reason for your work and what brings you back?
Yeah. So I feel like this point keeps coming up, but I'll mention once again that I feel like my poet self is a lot more social than my, I don't know, civilian self. And so every poem, I'm not like a private writer, you know what I mean? I don't keep a diary, I don't keep a journal, I don't process things in that way. I never have. And so anytime I'm sitting down to write a poem, it's for someone to read it, and it's usually for someone in particular to read it. I don't really have an abstract sense of like a reader, because that's terrifying. You know, that like the last thing you want to do when you sit down to write like a nascent baby draft of a poem is to imagine a stranger reading it and judging it. And so usually the thing that gets me to sit down to write a poem is, you know, today I would like to write a poem to make my childhood best friends laugh. Today I would like to write a poem about a shared memory with my brother, for him to read it and like feel that the way I tell the story is accurate. You know, so it's always like a very specific offering to a very specific person. It's almost, I have kind of an entirely epistolary relationship to writing poetry. It's always like the silent first line is like, dear mom or whoever, you know, and then the poem comes next. And so it's usually, it's like, I don't necessarily have a very enduring sense of clarity anywhere in my work. It's all kind of murky, feeling around in a dark room. But the one thing I do feel enduring clarity around is who I'm talking to each time I sit down to write a poem, you know? And again, it's usually not an abstract, or I'm not like, I am talking to Sudanese people or whatever, you know, like that's so essentializing. Some of these people are into all sorts of stuff. Not all of them like poetry. So it helps instead to be like, today I am talking to like my 5 Sudanese friends that live here in LA, because it's a very specific hybrid experience. We're so far from Africa over here. You know what I mean? And that gives me, because, you know, I feel like we all obviously like code switch in macro ways all the time, but I do think there also like each individual relationship has its code as well, and its idiolect and whatever. And so I feel kind of most specific in my use of language when I pick who exactly I'm talking to, because it changes how I'm talking. If I'm talking to my mother, I'm not going to use any swears. You know what I mean? If I'm talking to Sudanese American childhood friends, I am funnier historically because I have access to all of my languages in the like the specific languages, you know, where like my Arabic is specifically Sudanese. My English is specifically informed by the context of my Blackness here in America. You know, I'm not speaking like British English or Australian English or Canadian English. So it does help really like clarify my tools. When I sit down, I look at the blank page. Silent first line is dear my husband. And then the way the texture of the language is going to be different when I'm talking to that person, instead of being like dear my grandmother, you know? And so it does. And sometimes when I feel like a poem is a little, you know, I like, it doesn't feel like it has heft or chew to it yet. I'm like, it's because you can't really tell who I'm talking to. You know, this is such a speaking to the void ass draft of a poem that I need to reassert who I'm talking to and behave as if I'm talking to a real person. And that will help the poem like put some meat on its bones, you know? How
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah. So, well, your approach is so cool. I've never thought of it that way, and now I'm like, I wonder what it would look like for me to approach poems that way. I actually think my approach is far more general than that. I was looking at the dedication for "I Am the Night Sky" today, and it says, "For our younger selves who grew up needing this book, and for our young brothers and sisters who will grow up with books like this." And I think that's very much who I write for. Like, I think a lot about, like, it's both selfish and self-centered, and also just about my people generally. Like, when a lot of my career, a lot of the way I think about trying to be like an artist and a poet and a creative person in this world is like trying to clear out space for like the next Black Muslim girl who decides to do this and kind of make it easier for her. And I think a lot about my little sister who's 6, and like writing and creating and being so that her being is easier when it's her turn, you know? And so it's general, but it's also kind of specific. And I don't approach poems with like, who is this for? But I approach poems like, what do I need to say, and then who do I think should hear it? And yeah, I don't know. That's how I do those things, and I just think it's, I don't know. Your approach is so cool. I'm just like, oh wow, specific people. I should try that. Like, dear. But yeah. Anyways, that's my answer to the question, and Alexa is back.
Hey, Alexa.
Hey, I am back, and I have this filter on, and I don't know how it got on. If you saw the last chat, you know that this is a problem that I have. I don't know if it's seeing something inside of me. I am feeling lots of love after listening to this conversation, and so maybe it was like, you know what we're gonna do? Hearts. But wow, just thank you all so much for doing this. I need to turn this off. I can't. It's distracting. We're done. I'm sorry. Thank you both so much, Sasa, Safia, for engaging in this brilliant conversation. I was learning so much. I was taking my notes. I just feel like, yeah, I feel smarter, and I'm sure everyone who had the pleasure of listening in feel like they're able to take something great away. Yeah, y'all, again, this was the Intergenerational Author Chat hosted by Shout Mouse Press to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. Again, the transcript of this will be published in our 10-year anthology in 2025, so please stay tuned for that. If you are not following us already, please follow us, because that's the best place where you'll be able to get some updates. You can also join our mailing list if you're into that kind of thing. It's up to you. But otherwise, thank you, Sasa, Safia, again, so much for taking the time to do this. I'm so glad we were able to make it work.
I know.
We did it. We did it. All right. Thank you so much. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Go off and be great. See y'all later.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sasa.
So
You're
you,
brilliant. I'm so glad I got to talk to you.
You as well. I'm so happy. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.